Hello, I'm Andrew Bush. I'm the director of the Bethlehem Institute of Peace and Justice at Bethlehem Bible College. And we're really pleased that you can join us today for the first of a series of brief interviews with global peacemakers. And we're very honored to have as our first guest, Dr. Martin Accad from Beirut, Lebanon. Dr. Accad was formerly the chief academic officer at the Arab Baptist Theological Seminary in Lebanon, but now he's beginning a very important new project. He's the director of the Action Research Associates, and the goals of the ARA are national reconciliation and the common good. And the ARA uses research to lead to activism and feeds the insights of activism back into research. Additionally, I just want to mention we're really pleased that Dr. Accad is a guest lecturer in our first online course of the Bethlehem Institute of Peace and Justice, which is launching this September, and you can still register for it. So you can listen to Dr. Accad again. So welcome, Martin. I hope that was a good introduction.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Yeah, thank you. I'm pleased to be with you.
Good. I want to begin just asking you about the status of Lebanese society, because what I read in the New York Times and other newspapers is just really so grim. It's been a little more than a year since the catastrophic explosion that really just shocked the world in the harbor in Beirut, which killed more than 218 people and just devastated a huge swath of the city. As a result of that, the government resigned, and I understand there's not a new government yet, and a weak economy went into free fall. How are people coping today? What's happening there?
Terribly, Andrew. Unfortunately, I think as grim a job as the news media might describe Lebanon today, I've never known my country at such a low point. And I was born 3 years before the Civil War. I grew up through the Civil War all the time in Lebanon, and I only left in the mid-90s for my master and PhD studies in the UK from 96 till 2001. And I've never seen Lebanon at such a low point as it is today. The port explosion, which took place now a little over a year ago on the 4th of August of 2020, was not really the trigger for the economic downfall, but it was one of the results, as well as the economic collapse, a result of a deep-seated corrupt system that has been dragging Lebanon down for the past 30 years at least, if not even earlier, within the time of the Civil War. So we've been accumulating problem after problem. The whole world, of course, is bending under the burden of the COVID crisis. Lebanon has accumulated multiple crises on top of that. That began really to become very acute politically and economically during the summer of 2019, although already 2 years before that, at least, economists and people who understand market and banking have been warning that Lebanon was going towards collapse and towards a total devaluation of its money. And then on the 17th of October of 2019, we had a massive uprising that started as a result of the political and economic collapse. Of course, our political class is trying to point to 17 October 2019 as the root cause of the economic collapse and of all the problems. And you can see that in a multitude of ways. But this is a total lie and actually part of this political narrative that has been dragging Lebanon down. And then after the beginning of the uprising on 17 October 2019, COVID cases began to appear in Lebanon at the very end of February 2020 or early March. And then we had at the same time, the Lebanese pound was completely devaluating, losing its value. And then we had the terrible port explosion of the 4th of August of 2020. And we've had, problem after problem and tragedy after tragedy. We have an incredibly high number of people leaving Lebanon now. So it really pains me to see where we're heading with this country.
I'm so sorry to hear that. I just lost the image on my screen here. Can you still see me?
Yes, I do.
I don't know what's happened there, but we'll just keep going. I trust that the Zoom session is still going and recording. Sorry, folks, for that. How is your family doing in the midst of this? Are you doing okay?
We're doing okay. I think we're among the more fortunate in the current situation in Lebanon. I mean, we maybe the most valuable thing we have is in addition to Lebanese citizenship, also a foreign citizenship, which would allow us to leave whenever we would decide that we can't cope anymore, which is something that most Lebanese don't have, although many do have second citizenships as well. But, and probably, not probably, but certainly our economic situation is not as bad as a very large proportion of the Lebanese population as well. So it's a time when you think, how can I think more collectively? How can I think less selfishly? Because I don't remember another time in Lebanon's recent history when so many families don't have money or don't have enough food to put on the table for their children, and it's really very difficult to see that.
I'm really sorry to hear that. I mean, just the general description, and it's difficult to imagine because I always think of Lebanon as sort of a bright star in the Middle East, and it's really hard to hear such descriptions of the country. How have religious institutions fared during this? Primarily, I'm thinking of local churches, where you used to teach at the Arab Baptist Theological Seminary. How are religious institutions coping through this?
Well, there are two sides to that. One of them is that religion is perceived as being big part of the problem. Religious institutions, in particular, the hierarchy, the top leadership, are considered to be in cahoots with the corrupt political system, and so a lot of the anti-authority, anti-corruption movement in Lebanon has also directed its anger and frustration at patriarchs and muftis and bishops and sheikhs. And so that is unfortunate. It means that the religious institution has not managed to preserve itself from the status quo, has not managed to be a prophetic voice in society for the most part. And that's, I think, something that needs to be considered, and to very carefully the religious institutions have to think, how are they going to be part of the solution in the days ahead and years ahead, not continue to be part of the problem. The other side is brighter, which is that there have been some institutions and organizations and churches that have been able to be a beacon of light and all of that. I think that the Arab Baptist Theological Seminary in Lebanon has always tried to preserve a prophetic voice in the midst of all the difficulties. We've always had a message that has tried to focus on Jesus and his message and his values and his prophetic stance, rather than being co-opted by religion and religious institutions. Just to give you a small, very practical example, as a result of all of our crises, we have no more diesel in Lebanon. When you don't have diesel and you don't have petrol anymore for cars or gas, So there are long lines of several hours if you want to fill your car. The whole electrical infrastructure of Lebanon has collapsed, so the government is not offering any more electricity, maybe 1 or 2 hours a day in the Beirut area, nothing anymore in the outside of Beirut. So we have a whole neighborhood generator system also that developed since the time of the war, because the corrupt system has not allowed for rebuilding a proper electricity infrastructure in Lebanon, electricity network. So we've relied for the past 30 years and back into the war on neighborhood generators. Now these neighborhood generators need diesel to run, and so now they don't have diesel. There's a price on the black market that's 10 times the price on the normal market. So even those neighborhood generators now only are able to give a few hours every 24 hours of electricity. Nobody in Lebanon today has more than, barely 10, 12 hours of electricity if they're lucky. So it's now what ABTS has done is, because we have our own generators, so long as we're able to obtain diesel, we've opened a hole inside ABTS where we have air conditioning, internet, and electricity. And we've put a post on our social media, Facebook, and that anybody can come, recharge their phone, their computer, work there if they need to, have important meetings and be in an environment. So this is a service that we're rendering to the broader community, and I mean everyone. I'm not referring to the church community. And so people even have been commenting. We had a radio talk show that mentioned that yesterday. That was very encouraging. People need every little sign of hope, of humanity, and it has exponential power in this day. And so that is very important for the church to be aware of, and to really be salt and light in this impossible situation.
Well, that's a good message for the church just all over the world, especially during this COVID time, and so many services are discontinued of different types. It's really encouraging to hear what ABTS is doing, and that's a very innovative idea and very practical. As a longtime scholar of Christian Muslim relations, how has all the pressure that Lebanese society is experiencing, how has that been brought to bear on Christian Muslim relationships? I mean, generally in any relationship where there's more stress in the context of the relationship, different things will come out in the relationship between those parties. And how is it faring? Is it provoking any positive new steps in trying to build meaningful relationships, or are things breaking down? What do you see?
I think at the interpersonal level, things continue to be positive. Here I mean between religious leaders, whether Christian, Muslim, Druze, or every other subgroup within these broad groups. The problem is that the religious institution as a hierarchy can often become the mouthpiece of what I would call the sectarian narrative. I want to distinguish between religion and sect here, because religion tends to be confused with sect in our sort of societies. And this is why, and this is something many people don't understand, but when someone asks you in Lebanon, are you a Christian or a Muslim? They're not asking about your theological position or whether you go to church or to the mosque on Sunday or on Friday. They're really asking what political social group you belong to, what sect you belong to. And then they want to, their next question will be to understand which subsect are you part of. And the reason why they do that is because they want to know which political leader you are likely to have allegiance to. And so the sect and the religion and religious affiliation in a country like Lebanon, and I suspect also in other countries in the Levant, I'm not sure how it is in Palestine, but the sect or the question of religion has become meaningless, really meaningless. And so we need, as followers of Jesus, to find new language to talk about faith, because Christian has lost its meaning. Christianity has lost its meaning. The uprising, the revolution of 17 October 2019 in Lebanon has become also very strongly an anti-religion movement. We need to distinguish, we need to have a voice which is also against sectarian religion. We need to have a voice that's against this sectarianism that manifests itself constantly for political gain in a country like Lebanon. And we need to bring the conversation back as a church to Jesus himself, to his teaching, to the values that he taught and demonstrated. And we need to live this out in our everyday life. You know, I mentioned this ABTS very small initiative. And another thing that my colleagues did is to take to take water bottles and manouche, I think you know what that is, like this small za'atar, thyme pizza type of thing, and to distribute it in the long lines of people waiting at gas stations. And that was, I mean, the reactions were incredible. People are like, they close their windows first thinking someone's coming to beg or to ask for something. And then they're stunned that there are still people who would think of doing something like that, and it gives them hope again in the midst of all of this darkness. So we need to demonstrate the gospel and the kingdom of God in small, practical ways today. Otherwise, everything is meaningless. And to be honest, I haven't found the religious institution to be the most courageous in these difficult situations. There are individual initiatives, there are individual faith leaders who are faithful and who are transformative and prophetic in their behavior and attitude and discourse. But the majority, the institution, is one of the least gutsy, in my opinion, some of the most conservative, least willing to put themselves on the line when things like that happen. And to be honest, that's a little bit why I decided to shift my attention in the next phase and season of my life on a different kind of group in Lebanon that I think might be more capable of bringing change, because I don't have a lot of faith anymore that the religious institution as a mass is able to bring change into the darkness that we live in.
Well, that's sad when the church sinks to that level, when the salt has lost its saltiness. What's it good for? But Jesus said, but to be thrown out. And yet we see in countries around the world where the church has been co-opted by different political agendas and has just completely ceased to be a witness for Christ. And so it's a time of where the church really has to take a look at itself, for sure. And I appreciate what you're emphasizing, just these small practical steps to be the church in our societies, and to try to reclaim just a sliver of that prophetic voice. Well, as we close, just how can people around the world stand with you and the people of Lebanon at this time?
Of course, I'm gonna repeat what, the cliches of prayer that we need. It's more than a cliche in reality. I don't think that we can survive without support in prayer from the global community of Christ. Talk to your friends if you know friends in Lebanon. Support them by speaking to them over the phone, over messages. The slightest movement of humanity, the slightest expression of humanity, of care, will go a long way today. If you have people coming to Lebanon, bring in medicine. There are no more medicines in pharmacies, even the most basic medicine. I can't get you to bring petrol and and diesel and.
It sounds like we could bring some buckets of that and could use it.
Yeah, and and I don't want to sound I'm not. So if you have friends in Lebanon who have only access to Lebanese pounds, have no access to foreign currency, even sending them a couple $100 can make a huge difference in their monthly situation, because the Lebanese pound has devaluated so terribly, and the cost of living has gone up so much for people who don't have access to foreign currency. And so really, like, I'm talking to anyone who has friends, individuals, check on them, see how they're doing, if they're able to survive, because the situation is very difficult. Please pray for some solutions also for the educational system, because we don't know in 2 weeks whether our children will be able to go to school. Schools can't turn the lights on. With the collapse of electricity comes the collapse of the internet. So we can't, so online learning is not an alternative. Some schools are talking about pre-recorded lectures that they will send, to a 7-year-old, to a 9-year-old, to a 12-year-old. How do they study? How do teachers come to school without gas? How do students come to school without gas? So we literally don't know. My kids are supposed to start school in 2 weeks. I don't know whether we don't know whether the schools will be able to start. They might, and this has nothing to do with COVID. We haven't even touched COVID yet, because that's also a problem. This has to do with the collapse of a whole system, of a whole country. Lebanon has become a failed state, and we have no idea where we're going, and there is frankly no light at the end of the tunnel at this point that I can see. And if you ask anyone who knows me, I'm one of the optimists traditionally.
Wow, gosh, what a profound picture. And really, our hearts just go out to you and all the people of Lebanon. And we will follow up on those suggestions you've made. And I'll talk to the college here and see what connections we can build on and try to help. But thank you very much, Martin, for this time. It's just been a very profound few minutes of sharing with you. And thank you for taking the time to be with us.
Thank you, Andrew. Thanks for the opportunity to vent, if nothing else. And I hope that some of what I've said will.
No, it's more than venting. It was way more than venting. No, it was very good. Well, thank you.